The U.S. is set to ban TikTok and WeChat this Sunday, and if other Chinese-based apps raise the same national security concerns, they will face the same fate. U.S. sanctions not only hit Huawei's mobile phone productions hard, but are likely affecting Chinese passenger plane manufacturers due to a lack of key components. A Chinese pro-democracy poet and his wife were arrested. Their 4 young children are under house arrest with their grandma. Nobody is allowed to visit them. The father of a Chinese American was denied entry to the U.S., possibly due to his membership of the Chinese Communist Party. And concern is rising that China could start using hybrid warfare. We sat down with the host of Crossroads, Joshua Philipp, to learn more about those risks. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Now we turn to Taiwan. That's where U.S. Undersecretary of State Keith Krach had a closed-door meeting with Taiwan's Vice Premier and Minister of Economic Affairs on Friday. Talks focused on economic ties and new trade dialogues. He also had dinner with President Tsai Ing-wen. The meetings came as part of the U.S. officials' second day visiting the island. China had earlier announced combat drills and denounced what it called collusion between Taiwan and the United States. During the U.S. visit, Taiwan's defense ministry wrote on Twitter that 18 Chinese fighter jets had crossed the midline of the Taiwan Strait and entered Taiwan's air defense identification zone. It explained that Taiwan's air defense scrambled the fighters and deployed its air defense missile system to monitor the activities. Beijing claims the democratic island is part of its territory, but Taiwan staunchly maintains its independence. Before Krach set off for the island on Wednesday, Congressman Tom Tiffany introduced a bill calling on the Trump administration to abandon the One China policy and resume formal relations with Taiwan. In the 70s, as the U.S. built up diplomatic relationships with Communist China, it cut off official relations with Taiwan. One of Taiwan's neighbors also appears to want to strengthen ties with Taiwan. Japan's former Prime Minister Yoshiro Mori arrived in Taipei on Friday, ahead of a memorial ceremony for former Taiwan leader Lee Teng-hui. Mori met with Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen and expressed greetings from Japan's new Prime Minister Suga.
We treasure and share the same values and concepts of freedom, democracy, and free economy with Taiwan. Just as you said, I hope that we and our governments will make a joint effort to push for further development of our two countries in all fields.
According to Taiwan Central News Agency, Japan's new prime minister plans to speak with Taiwan's president. If it happens, it would mark the first time since the two countries cut off their diplomatic relationship about 50 years ago. President Trump is set to ban the Chinese-based apps TikTok and WeChat this Sunday. His administration cites national security concerns as the reason for blocking the apps. And additional bans will be put in place if other apps show the same illegal behavior.
The Trump administration will block Americans from accessing WeChat and TikTok starting Sunday at midnight, citing national security concerns. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo addressed the move during a visit to Guyana.
Our goals are really very straightforward: protecting American information and data from ending up in the hands of the Chinese Communist Party.
WeChat will be completely banned on Sunday, but Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross says TikTok will stay intact until November 12th. Last month, the president gave TikTok's parent company ByteDance 90 days to divest its assets and submit to a full audit. If ByteDance doesn't get a deal by November 12th that complies with Trump's order, then it will be shut down. The two Chinese-based applications come under scrutiny for jeopardizing national security and the U.S. economy. The Commerce Department stated that WeChat and TikTok collect large amounts of data which may end up in the hands of the Chinese regime. That's because the apps are part of China's civil-military fusion and must cooperate with the intelligence service of the Chinese Communist Party. Both TikTok and WeChat collect user data, including network activity, location, and search histories. Ross said the ban combats the Chinese regime's malicious collection of Americans' personal data while enforcing U.S. laws and regulations. Several million people in the U.S. use WeChat. Some depend on the app to keep in touch with friends, family, and colleagues in China. A few people say they rely on the app for work and worship. They, along with the nonprofit U.S. WeChat Users Alliance, sued the administration over the ban, saying it violates their constitutional rights and stops their communication with China. The Justice Department said people who only use WeChat to share personal or business information between users would not be criminally liable. The ban is the latest in the Trump administration's efforts to counter Beijing's actions to undermine U.S. institutions and public security. Kevin Hogan, NTD News.
Uber is planning to sell part of its $6.3 billion stake in ride-hailing company DIDI. It's an effort to raise cash. According to Bloomberg, Japanese conglomerate SoftBank is in talks about buying Uber's 15% stake in the Chinese company. Uber and SoftBank were not immediately available for comment. DIDI said it had no comment on the report. Tab Food Investments is also weighing whether to sell its China business. According to Bloomberg, it has a value of more than $1.2 billion. Tab Food Investments is the largest global franchise of Restaurant Brands International Incorporated. Based in Turkey, it holds 50% stake in Burger King's Chinese operations and runs more than 1,200 Burger King outlets in more than 150 Chinese cities. Sources with knowledge about the matter say a sale would kick off as soon as next month. Likewise, U.S. foreign exchange broker Oanda recently issued a notice to its customers in China, saying it will close all trading accounts belonging to Chinese customers on October 30th. Chinese financial expert Xi Ling told Radio Free Asia that the withdrawal of foreign capital is due to problems in the Chinese market. He added that China is strongly promoting household consumption, accelerating the withdrawal of foreign capital. Oanda is a leading company in the currency data and foreign exchange trading field. Last week, it announced it would permanently close its foreign exchange forum. The forum had been temporarily suspended for weeks before that. As early as mid-June of last year, Oanda issued a notice to suspend the acceptance of new customers in China. Existing customers would not be affected. Oanda explained that it needed to adjust its business in the country. Under pressure from the United States, the Chinese Communist regime removed some financial market barriers for foreign firms last year. But it has yet to stop the withdrawal of foreign financial companies. Sun Dali, a financial scholar at China's Hebei University, says the Chinese Communist Party's increased control of currencies has led to the withdrawal of foreign-funded companies. He added that China's economic vitality is gone. The U.S. House of Representatives passed a resolution on Thursday. It denounces what it called anti-Asian rhetoric related to the pandemic, including China virus. The resolution passed 243 to 163. 14 Republicans voted yes, along with 229 Democrats. All of the no votes came from the Republicans. A Democratic representative introduced this resolution due to a surge of assaults on Asian Americans since the pandemic hit America. The resolution will not be sent to the Senate or to the White House to sign or veto. Representative Kevin McCarthy called the resolution a waste of time. He said he thinks the House should focus on bigger issues, such as how to compete with China. China's domestic passenger plane manufacturing project is experiencing significant delay. Experts say U.S. sanctions are likely to be the main reason.
As Huawei is running out of chips, the C919, referred to as the domestic big plane in the Chinese Communist Party propaganda, is also facing challenges in development and delivery. It's alleged to be made in China and is expected to compete with the Airbus A320 and Boeing 737. Since most of C919's key components are from the U.S., the CCP's big plane project is likely to be suspended due to U.S. sanctions. Beijing made the C919 an integral part of its Made in China 2025 initiative. Since 2008, the CCP's state-owned aircraft manufacturer, Comac, has been developing the plane largely in secret. Its first aircraft was scheduled to be produced in late 2015, but the first test flight did not take place until May 2017, and only 6 aircraft have been built for test flights so far. China Eastern Airlines will be the first customer of the C919, and a delivery date was officially announced as set for 2021. According to radio network Voice of America, or VOA, the founder of aviation industry analyst firm Indu Analytics said that the C919 relies heavily on the Western supply chain. He said delays in delivery are inevitable as the pandemic continues. CCP officials claim that the C919 has achieved a nearly 60% localization rate and will strive to reach 100%. However, VOA quoted the senior advisor from CSIS, Scott Kennedy, that the C919 is only nominally a domestic aircraft because all the components that make it fly come from the supply chain in the West, especially the U.S. For example, its engine is from CFM International, a joint venture between General Electric of the United States and Safran of France. And its key systems, such as avionics, flight control, fuel, landing gear, etc., are using the mature technology from overseas or are manufactured by Sino-foreign joint ventures. There are at least 7 U.S. firms in the list of C919's first-tier suppliers. Scott says that since the CCP is promoting military-civilian integration, the U.S. may re-examine whether technology provided to the C919 will help the CCP develop its military, and there would be a high probability of sanctions. Reporting by Xu Wenhui, NTD News.
Chinese dissident and poet Wang Zhang and his wife have been arrested. They've been charged with what authorities call inciting subversion of state power. Following their arrest, their 4 young children and Wang's mother were left under house arrest and police surveillance.
On Thursday, Wang Zhang met with his lawyers for the first time in the detention center of Chuxiong City in Yunnan Province. After learning that his wife was also arrested, he was extremely upset and expressed his concerns about their 4 young children. His lawyer stated that the authorities accused Wang of inciting subversion of state power after he was released from detention in 2015. The accusation is mainly based on his public remarks, media interviews, poems, articles, and performance art that support democracy and freedom and criticize the communist regime. In January this year, Wang and his family were forced by the authorities to leave Beijing and move back to his hometown. In May, Wang was arrested from his home. Wang's wife wrote on social media that more than 20 policemen went to their home. They first knocked him down, put handcuffs and a black hood on him before taking him away. They then took hold of Wang's wife, mother, and 4 children, causing his mother to faint and remain unconscious as Wang's wife was taken away by the police. She returned home at 4:30 in the morning the next day and found her children still waiting for her, crying when they saw her again. After she was taken away, her younger son hid behind a curtain for hours until his grandma regained consciousness and found him. Wang's wife appealed for her husband online and was arrested in June. Since then, their 4 children have been looked after by Wang's mother. Insiders said that due to financial difficulties, the 4-year-old twins cannot go to kindergarten. The 8-year-old girl is picked up by the police every day to and from school. The 4 children and their grandma are being guarded at home by many policemen. According to a recording on file provided by an insider, in July, a courier called Wang's friend, stating that a package could not be delivered and could only be delivered to the guard room outside the unit, and that the police signed for it.
The police did not allow me to go up. Did this family commit a major crime, or what's the matter? There are more than a dozen policemen downstairs here every day. It's been like this for 6 months.
Their relatives dare not visit them. Some of their friends want to visit them, but are not allowed by police. They mailed food and daily necessities to them. But then since July, the family were no longer allowed to receive any packages from outside.
Now we take a look at the Trump administration's possible ban on Chinese Communist Party members. It's still unclear if the U.S. will go through with it, but the potential is garnering attention via a new case. In a Friday tweet, U.S. legal advisor Zhen Chunzhu described receiving a consultation call from a Chinese woman. She said she was a naturalized American citizen. Her father had previously been released due to his being a member of the Chinese Communist Party. She explained that her father sought to enter the U.S. with a tourist visa on Friday but was denied entry. He was made to wait at the airport to be sent back to China. Zhen also posted a chat message on Twitter suggesting that his consultant, the daughter, to tell her father to quit the CCP as soon as possible and submit the statement of withdrawal to the U.S. government. Since then, news of his case has gone viral. One netizen said it's best to repatriate all underground CCP members hidden in the U.S. I know of several in California. They're all American citizens, and they even claim to be Christians, but they still think about their retirement pensions from China and still pay their CCP membership fees. Another user wrote, "It's absolutely good news if it's true. Members and admirers of the CCP slander the U.S. all the time, portraying the U.S. as hell on earth. Why do such people still apply for immigration to this country? Why should the U.S. accept such people? Let them have their Chinese dream in China." Still another netizen saluted the U.S. action, expressing his opinion via a video clip worth 1,000 words. From Hollywood to academia to professional sports like the NBA, Beijing has managed to exert its influence across much of American society. Jan Jekielek, host of the Epoch Times program American Thought Leaders, sat down with Texas Senator Ted Cruz to discuss how the U.S. can build a strategy to counter that influence.
So, just about a year ago, I have to mention this, I was at the China Forum that the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation organized. You were giving a keynote, and I thought it was one of the more of the passionate, indictments of the Chinese Communist Party's war on religious liberty, I guess you could say. You mentioned the destruction of Christian churches and the persecution of Christians, the forced organ harvesting from the Falun Gong, the concentration camps for Uyghurs, up to 1 million people, and also actually the cultural genocide of Tibet, which is something that isn't mentioned a lot these days even. Where do you see things today? This was about a year ago you were talking about this.
They've only gotten worse, although I do think the world has opened its eyes more. I think the most significant foreign policy consequence to come out of the coronavirus pandemic is going to be a fundamental reassessment of the United States' relationship with China and of the world's relationship with China. I have long believed that China is the most significant geopolitical threat facing the United States for the next century, that combating China's hostility, aggression, theft of intellectual property, espionage, propaganda is a whole of government endeavor, and it's striking. A year ago, there were a lot of people in Washington who were China apologists, a whole lot of Democrats and even some Republicans, that they looked at China and they just saw a buck to be made. They saw the massive Chinese market. And sadly, we see that with U.S. companies, we see that with Hollywood, we see that with sports leagues, where the Chinese market, they want so much that they're willing to do business with torturers and murderers. They're willing to turn a blind eye. They're willing to give the Chinese Communist Party the censor's pen. And I am grateful that people in Washington and across the world are starting to see the threat that the Chinese government poses.
You know, in that same speech, you referenced Ronald Reagan's famous line, you know, tear down that wall. What would you say about Hong Kong today, then?
Very much the same thing, which is let the people go. And the analogy to the Berlin Wall, I believe we need the same sort of comprehensive approach to China that Reagan led with regard to the Soviet Union. China and the Chinese government is the new evil empire. And that is a combination of all sorts of tools. Now listen, nobody in their right mind wants to see a shooting war between the United States and China. You've got two massive militaries, and you would see an enormous number of casualties if we actually got into a shooting war. It's worth pointing out, for the entirety of the Cold War, we didn't get in a shooting war with the Soviet Union. Rather, and Reagan understood this the best, we engaged in a systematic, comprehensive effort to shine a light, to use the power of truth, to use economic pressures, to use diplomatic pressures, and to use the incredible power of the American free enterprise system to defeat them and to bankrupt them.
Privacy has become an increasingly important issue, from TikTok to recent leaks about China's massive database on millions of global citizens. Concern is rising that the data could lead to hybrid warfare. We sat down with the Epoch Times senior investigative journalist and host of Crossroads, Joshua Philipp, to learn more about those risks. Hello, Josh. Thank you so much for joining us today. Great to have you back on the show.
Hey, my pleasure, Tiffany. Good to be here.
So recently in the news a lot is the Zhenhua data leak, which has been impacting millions of people around the world, including in the U.S. So how big of an issue is this?
This is a very big issue. Actually, back in 2016, I wrote an exclusive story on this in Epoch Times, 4 years before it was leaked to the public. The Chinese Communist Party, it has this program in China called the Social Credit System, where they have a data bank on every single person. Well, my source back in 2016 revealed the CCP has extended that same exact database overseas. The United States, Canada, Australia, you name it. Different foreigners, people, whether you're an influencer or not, the Chinese Communist Party has you in their databases. And the Chinese Communist Party uses these to monitor people, to target people, and to go after Chinese dissidents. It's also part of their program, and they're expanding this program abroad, trying to build it in other countries, like they're doing under the One Belt, One Road initiative. This is the CCP exporting this high-tech totalitarianist system.
So how does that impact national security and the average American's own privacy?
Well, for national security, a few different ways. One, we can look, for example, at the Equifax breach. We can look at the OPM breach, the Office of Personnel Management. Remember OPM, this was one of the famous breaches of the Chinese Communist Party. That was the security clearances of government workers, which means when you go on camera and you spill your guts and you say every bad thing you've ever done in your life, the CCP has that now. They know every dirty detail about every single politician, every single person who has a security clearance, and they can use that for blackmail or for other forms of targeting. It's a massive, massive national security threat. In addition to this, the Chinese Communist Party has a system of unconventional warfare. They call it unrestricted warfare, hybrid warfare, you name it. And this also ties directly into that.
So you mentioned hybrid warfare. Can you expand on that? What is it exactly?
Well, so there are a lot of different names for these types of warfare. People talk about asymmetrical warfare, which is kind of like unconventional warfare tactics. Hybrid warfare is a fancy way of saying using multiple forms of war in conjunction with each other. They also talk about short of war tactic. Again, these are just plays on different names of concepts. Short of war would mean you push the idea of a war. You push things right to the boundary of what would constitute war, what would cause a war, but you never cross that boundary. Countries like Russia, countries like, say, Iran and China, they do it to the United States all the time. The CCP's form of warfare, a lot of people call it unrestricted warfare. And what is this? It's a different way of thinking about war. Now, in America, we think of, bombs, guns, jets, planes, and so on. For the CCP, warfare is foreign investment. It's business. It's entertainment. It's Hollywood. It's ideology. It's the manipulation of the international legal systems. It's the subversion of the very systems that make a society function, tying back to what they had during the Soviet Union, for example, in Russia, what they would call ideological subversion, taking control of the different systems and institutions at the heart of a country and making them serve an opposite function or making them serve the interests of their own country. The Chinese Communist Party does this very actively.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Josh. Great to have you on the show.
Hey, my pleasure as always, Tiffany.
And that's all for today's China in Focus. Thanks for watching and see you next time.